Vegetarians are second-class citizens, and rightly so. Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Business Blaze. I am your boy with the blaze. This is the Smash the Dislike button merch, which you can purchase at purchathemerch.co for Colombia or cocaine. This is Terrible Things About what goes on here is Danny writes as a script, I read it, Sam, our memologist, adds some memes, the terrible things about restaurants. This feels a bit like a low blow, doesn't it? This is recorded during the virus time. It might seem an odd time to start shitting on restaurants. Danny and I, same page, where many parts of the world are finally enjoying the opportunity to dine out and get ripped off again for what feels like the first time in ages. But that's how we sometimes roll on Business Blaze. In the next video, we'll be tearing the International Red Cross to fucking pieces. Yeah, Business Blaze, we're not exactly known for not being dickheads here. Here in the UK, we're currently taking advantage of the government's new Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which runs throughout August 2020. I've heard about this. Apparently, if you eat like in a restaurant on like a Monday or something, the government will just like pick up half the bill for you. That's awesome. And risk you getting COVID. In a bid to help the economy get moving again, we can now get half-price meals in 72,000 participating restaurants, with the British taxpayer copping for the other half. It's pretty great. It's an offer available from Mondays to Wednesdays, which is nice, up to a maximum discount value of £10. What? How much does the government think that eating in a restaurant costs? It's a pretty cheap restaurant, and you're alone. So maybe it's not such a tempting offer for fancy restaurants where the discount might just get you 10 quid off a bowl of guacamole. But it works out quite well for a branch of McDonald's, where I've been happily getting through 2 whole Big Mac meals for the price of 1. That's pretty awesome though, yeah. Okay, so you could spend £20 and you end up only spending £10. So yeah, for McDonald's that's pretty good. You could have a bit of a feast. By the time lockdown is completely over, I'm not going to be able to squeeze my way out of the house if I wanted to. Okay, Danny. I should perhaps be doing more to help smaller restaurants get back on their feet instead of just lining the already super deep pockets of Ronald McDonald, that rich fuck. But it's allegedly. But it turns out that dining out in some of the less than reputable restaurants can be an absolutely terrible idea from start to finish, diced with danger and deception and dietary disaster. Oh my god, all of the D's. Here's why. They spend the day rolling around in filth like animals. Who do? Most of us have probably already heard stories of chefs putting steaks through a dishwasher to clean them up a bit, or sneezing violently into a customer's baguette and then sending it out with a shrug. I have not, Danny. And now I have, and now I'm concerned. I bought a salad for lunch today, now I'm a little bit nervous about it. But some restaurants take sloppy cooking environments to a whole new level. If you ever find yourself in London, in the borough of Newham, I don't know, I've never been there. And here's a piece of advice for you. Take a packed lunch with you. Don't ever be foolish enough to book a table in a restaurant. Newham allegedly has a woeful record when it comes to food hygiene, with more than half of dining establishments in the borough failing inspections. Holy shit! Why is everyone like in the same club of just sneezing in baguettes here? Sometimes the inspectors have a fight on their hands just trying to get inside. The Golden Dragon takeaway in Newham had been on the radar for some time in 2014, but it always just seemed to be locked up when the inspectors called. How convenient. Is that real? Can you really get away with stuff like that? It's like, yeah, I couldn't get my inspection. We were closed that day. So I guess we're good until next year? Eventually, an inspector hung around long enough outside for a shifty guy on a moped to enter the building and leave with a fresh delivery, during which time the inspector managed to sneak in under the shutters. As we can see in pictures that Sam will hopefully be putting on the screen right about now, the inspector walked in to a far from savory working environment. Cooks were wearing filthy clothes, the place was littered with cockroaches and rodent droppings, and uncovered saucepans were left cooking right next to stinking rubbish bags. Although the Golden Dragon was immediately closed down, the owner was never found or prosecuted, and it's unclear just how many customers had enjoyed a tasty treat from this establishment. How hard can it be to find the owner of a restaurant? It's a restaurant. You just look it up, and then you go and arrest that guy. That may not be quite as bad as the Karachi Karahi restaurant, also found in Newham. Jesus, Newham. The owners of this Indian restaurant spectacularly managed to poison 32 diners in one night. I'm not sure I'd call that spectacular, Danny. I know it's probably a neutral term, but it's like, yeah, spectacular damage. It kind of sounds like it's good. They'd already been served with improvement notices over the years and even been temporarily closed down for food hygiene issues. I'm like, if one of my local restaurants, I'm just browsing around and there's a big sign on the door that says it's been shut down for food hygiene reasons, I'm never going there again. That's that. I'm done. But one day in 2013, when they were back open for business, the Karachi Karahi restaurant was catering for an event hosted by the Sindhi Association of Europe, and it seems there was a bit of a problem with the chicken biryani. And in fact, it got very serious indeed. 32 of the unlucky diners went down with severe food poisoning, and one of them even died the very next day. Jesus Christ! You poisoned someone to death! Although a judge ruled that the lack of microbiological evidence meant that he couldn't be certain the diner's death was the direct result of food poisoning. If I was that judge, I'd be like, allegedly. However, the couple who owned the restaurant were still found guilty of supplying unsafe food. They were sentenced to 150 hours of community service, ordered to pay £25,000 in court costs, and banned from running a food business for 5 years. In the US, they'd have 1 million hours of community service, pay $250,000 in court costs, and have to go to prison for 17 years. So these people can open a restaurant again in 5 years. You'd be like, yeah, they learned their lesson. Their community service was in Hygiene. So good news is that if you still fancy a taste of that chicken biryani for yourself, there's now nothing legally stopping them from opening shop again. Let's not do that. Whoever these people are, avoid their shit like the plague because, well, it might contain plague. It was argued at the time that the sentencing was too lenient. Come on, look at the Americans. The Americans know what's up. Put the life without parole.
You undercook fish, believe it or not, jail. You overcook chicken, also jail. Undercook, overcook.
And it does seem as if some restaurants get away with more than you might imagine. For example, health inspectors checking out another UK restaurant were more than a little startled when they came across a dead lion in the food freezer during their investigation. I'd be more surprised if there was an alive lion in the freezer. I mean, most meat in the... Maybe they were just serving lion. Maybe this was like... You know, McDonald's has the secret menu and you could ask like, oh, I'd like the Big Mac without meat or what the f ever. That was a dumb example. Maybe it's a secret menu item. Just to repeat that in case anyone thinks I made a typo, they found a dead lion in a freezer alongside other more traditional ingredients that were destined for human consumption. No one thought you made a mistake, Danny. You put it in bold. In case you're squeamish, the picture Sam should be throwing up about now is a satirical mock-up of the scene rather than a real lion corpse. Sam, if there is the picture of the real lion corpse, you know what to do. Someone hit me up on Twitter the other day being like, Simon, I watched your video about the Cascadia disaster, like the potential of an earthquake destroying most of America. I was shocked to see video of a tsunami sweeping people away. I wasn't ready for that. And I'm like, yo, you clicked on a video about basically the end of a country, like being destroyed by a giant earthquake. What exactly did you expect? Sake. There's water everywhere. The owner of the restaurant claimed that the dead lion had been donated to him by a local zoo as a gift to feed his pack of hungry dogs. And although he was ordered to move it out of the restaurant, no further action was taken on the grounds that everything seemed to be tickety-boo. I would just love to see how they signed off that inspection. Minor issue with massive dead lion in freezer. Everything else top drawer, that's a pass. Massive dead-ass lion. You pay through the nose. I don't think anybody goes to a restaurant expecting a super value night out. You're naturally going to see a significant markup on many of the items listed on the menu. And often for perfectly legitimate reasons. Yeah, like you're seeing in the restaurant, they're cooking it for you, serving it to you. No, that's why. You're obviously not just paying the cost price for the shopping ingredients here, you're paying the professional service and lots of other costs involved in running a restaurant, obviously. But some stuff gets a surprisingly bigger markup than others. And you probably need to be particularly careful when selecting starters and side servings, as the price of these seems to be getting increasingly random. Oh my god, they're like Uber Eats. It's like, yeah, do you want tomato ketchup with that? That's gonna be the equivalent of like £2. How much is a bottle of ketchup? It's ridiculous. The pricing is often just tied in with how exotic the average customer perceives the dish to be. Let's say you order 2 entrees on the menu, which just so happen to contain the exact same value of ingredients and the exact same cost to produce. One of them contains $2 worth of chicken, and the other contains $2 worth of shrimp. The latter will often prove to be priced way higher than the former, just because the customer's instinct is that shrimp is a lot fancier than chicken. I don't think shrimp's fancier than chicken. I'm just so accustomed to it costing more, for whatever reason. It's not like you go to the store and you like see all the prawns, or Americans call them shrimps, in the freezer and you're like, wow, those are so expensive. I mean, the giant of like tiger prawns are. You know, when they're like in there, they're just like, they're not gonna be some big ass tiger prawns. They're gonna be like your regular sized prawns. From all the dishes on the menu, the starter section is the most likely to get the biggest markup. And the worst offender of them all is often guacamole. Guacamole? Taco? I've only tried it a couple of times myself. The first time I thought it was meant to be like mushy peas. The second time I probably would have realized I preferred mushy peas. peas. I quite like guacamole. The dish is essentially just a couple of mashed... Dude, we know what guacamole is. Who the f*** doesn't know what guacamole is? Mashed up avocados, sprinkling of herbs and vegetables at a cost of about $1 to produce. Yet some restaurants charge over $10 for the dish, with a few restaurants in New York even going as high as $15. Yeah, but like... And then it's like, yeah. New York, it'd be like, yeah, it's $15. And then you get the bill, it's like $78. And you're like, what happened? And you're like, yeah, well, there's like tax and service and cover. And it's like, what the f***? Just charge me $15 and then I'll decide how much I want to f***ing tip you. Christ, America. Christ! They probably wouldn't even consider charging $15 for a bowl of mushy peas, but guacamole sounds far more exotic, so they can get away with it. Dude, Americans, I don't think you eat mushy peas, right? Don't eat them, they're not that great. I mean, they're not bad. You know what's better? Non-mushed peas. Of course, the most effective way of inflating your bill at the end of the night is to order a couple of bottles of wine to go along with your mushy peas or guacamole. Allegedly, the industry standard is to charge for a glass what the restaurant pays for a bottle. I can believe it, right? But that might seem to be an over-generous approach in certain restaurants where the markup can be as much as 400%. You certainly don't want to be forking out for individual glasses, as the overall markup is generally going to be much higher. If you decided you want to be a bit fancy tonight, splash out on the whole darn bottle and save a few quid on the bill. But in exactly the same way that the mid-price starters and side dishes tend to be the biggest con on the menu, it's the mid-price bottles of wine that just tend to get whacked with the biggest markup. Yeah, I mean, go expensive and know what you're getting. Don't go for all the random ones in the middle because they're massively marked up. And then there's like the house ones. People don't want to go for the cheapest bottle of wine on the menu, but really it's going to be much better value than the ones just a few above it. And the restaurant know this. They know that you don't want to be cheapo and buy the cheapest bottle, so the one above it will be worse and much more expensive. Don't get that one, it's a trick. If the restaurant spends a fortune on a particularly expensive bottle of wine, they can only get away with hiking up the price so far before it gets ridiculous. But the mid-priced to mediocre bottles of wine have much more wiggle room for markups. So here's the ultimate business place tip to get the best possible value from your dining experience. Skip starters altogether, and then order the most expensive things on the menu. Danny's saving us all money. Vegetarians are second-class citizens, and rightly so. Back when I was younger, I used to be a vegetarian for a couple of years. I was largely motivated by the fact that my girlfriend at the time was vegetarian, but that's not to say that I was a reluctant convert. I was a perfectly happy veggie for a while. It felt good that I was not contributing to the slaughter of sweet, fluffy animals. Sadly, it all came crashing down when I went to the pub one night and ended up passing a kebab house on the way home. Oh, shit. The temptation was too much to resist and my new girlfriend wasn't very impressed. Just go for the falafel one, it's perfectly good. Often if there's a particularly dodgy kebab place, I'll be like, I know it probably does make sense because I'm more likely to get poisoned from the salad or whatever. But like, there's some dodgy meat turning around on a pole, it's like, I'm gonna have falafel. I've often considered becoming a vegetarian again, and I'm sure there are a few far more dedicated vegetarian and vegan restaurants around today than there were back then. Yeah, too many. They're taking up all the space from the meat restaurants. But veggies still seem to get a hard time in mainstream restaurants where the single vegetarian option can just be a plain baked potato or a plate of cheese and onion crisps with a bit of lettuce sprinkled on top. Yeah, it's gotta be rough, right? I mean, it's like, what have you got? Well, we have side salad. Still, while a severely limited menu might be quite annoying, it's probably not quite as annoying as being misled by a so-called vegetarian option that's nothing of the sort. Turning briefly to the fast food industry, McDonald's has found itself in sizzling hot fat for not being entirely upfront about its French fries. Back in 1999, the company made a big deal about how its French fries were now cooked in vegetable oil rather than beef fat, and they started using terms like natural ingredients and natural flavors in the marketing and menu boards. Why? Because beef fat isn't natural? Also, it sounds much more delicious when you cook it in beef fat. This led to many vegetarians and also Hindus who consider the cow to be sacred and magical or something. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, all religions are weird, but like, yeah, we worship a cow. Oh, to assume that fries were suitable for their diet. But it turns out the fries were still flavored with beef extract very early on in the process, and McDonald's soon found themselves facing a $100 million lawsuit. Oh, shit. To be fair, McDonald's never directly claimed that their fries were vegetarian, but they did apologize for any confusion and agreed to donate $10 million to vegetarian and Hindu groups. Wait, so they didn't say anything. They did say, they were just like, yeah, we now, what did they say? Natural ingredients and natural flavors. Jesus, McDonald's, you have too much money. Customer service is a nightmare. Well, not everywhere. obviously. I know there are plenty of hardworking people out there doing amazing jobs in restaurants, and we salute you, but I hope you're not offended if we just park you for a moment while we concentrate on the truly terrible ones because they're funnier. For example, one couple recently visited a US restaurant and placed their drinks order with the waitress, but noticed that there was no silverware laid out on the table. Steady on, they might bring it in a second. The waitress said, "No problem, I'll be right back." She did come back with the drinks and took their food orders, but still no sign of the silverware, so this was again politely pointed out. The waitress said again, "No problem, I'll be right back." The waitress next returns with the food, which is laid out on the table, but there's still no sign of the silverware. The waitress says again, "No problem, I'll be right back." Oh my god, where is this story going? It must be hard to describe the frustration of feeling hungry and staring at piping hot food right in front of you, but not having the tools to consume it. I probably would have been tempted to dive in with my fingers at this point, even if it was a chicken biryani or something. I'd just stand the f up, go over to the service station, grab the stuff myself, and when they give me a dirty look, I'll be like, I asked 3 times! And you're not getting a tip. Except in America, they'll be like, yeah, 20% service. And I'm like, I did it myself. This is why it's ridiculous. They're serving like 20% tips or whatever, and it's like they're mandatory. It's like, what the f is going on? If the service sucks, I don't want to pay it. If it's really good, I want to pay more. And people will be like, Simon, but servers, they don't make enough money, so they make the money off the tips. And I'm like, so f***ing pay them more. They make $4 an hour. That's not my fault, is it? Introduce some laws. But the couple patiently waited for 5 more minutes with still no sign of the waitress until they eventually gave up, wandered around the restaurant, and found their own silverware. Like, in credit that, yes! After they finished the meal, they informed the manager of the slight problem they had faced while trying to eat a meal without a knife or fork. The manager fetched the waitress to the table, presumably to give her the opportunity to apologize. Alas, it wasn't happening. Instead, the waitress started ranting and raving that the customers had been trying to steal the silverware. If someone said that to me, I'd be like, "You smoking crack?" Yeah, no, I steal the silverware. Like, I thought it was actually made of silver. Another story involves an Italian... That's it? That's the end of the story, Danny? I thought there was going to be more. Like, is it something no one's going to get stabbed or something? Come on. Another story involves an Italian restaurant in Amsterdam where a young couple arrived and placed an order for pizza. Nearly an hour passed with still no sign of the meal, while customers who had arrived much later on seemed to be getting served food with no problem. Eventually, after waiting for what seemed like an eternity, the couple shrugged and gave up, and they made for the door. Yeah, honestly, I'm half an hour, and if someone's getting food before me and like they forgot about me, I'm just leaving. I'm just gonna go somewhere else. The good news is that this finally seemed to attract the attention of restaurant management. The bad news is that the owner charged straight towards the door and locked it before turning to the customers and screaming in their face that they couldn't leave the restaurant until they'd paid for the pizza they ordered. You're an insane person, manager. You're literally like kidnapping these people. 3 of the owner's burly sons also arrived on the scene to block the path to the door. After 15 minutes of yelling and shrieking and threats to call the police on both sides, just call them! Don't threaten, just call. The hungry customers somehow managed to dash towards the door, unlock it, and made a successful bid for freedom. They never returned to the restaurant, and I like to think they exacted the ultimate form of cunning revenge by leaving a very snide review on TripAdvisor. What a situation! But maybe some restaurant owners try a little bit too hard. Another couple were enjoying a Saturday night out in their local branch of IHOP, which I recently heard had been renamed IHOB for International House of Breakfast instead of pancakes, which is, I don't know why I read that news article. I've never even been to one of these. I've never even seen one of these. They were disappointed when their meals arrived, as the stuffed crepes and ham scrambler were stone cold. They made a complaint and were provided with a gushing apology along with the promise of replacement meals. But when take 2 of the meals arrived, everything was still stone cold. And now the stuffed crepes are missing the blueberries. The customers again complain, and the manager is mortified. He immediately offers completely free meals in compensation. Please tell me they're cold. And then goes one step further in his efforts to lift the disappointment. He drags the chef out to the table and gives him a whipping note, and forces him to make a tearful apology for the unacceptable service. Oh shit. This goes hard both ways, Danny. I love this. After the chef has apologized, and finished blubbering. The manager goes further still. He fires the chef and demands that he leave the building, much to the horror of the customers who are only after a few warm crepes. Oh my god. A warm ham scrambler and some blueberries. Oh, like I'd be upset, you know? It's like, I'll just leave. I mean, I'm bothered. I'd be like, oh, you upset me. It was my breakfast. I'll be annoyed. But I don't want the dude to get fired, for f***'s sake. Especially not in front of everyone. And he's probably only getting paid $4 an hour. Whether they got served hot food that dark night is undocumented, but bearing in mind that the chef has been sent packing, it's probably quite unlikely. Crooked Cooking. The coveted title of world's best restaurant probably goes to the Colony Cafe in Miami Beach, or it could be the Colony Hotel or Colony Bistro or Moro's or Columbus Cafe. Really? The thing is, all these different names are for exactly the same restaurant in Miami Beach, but they all use lots of different ones so as to confuse the potential diner who might be tempted to leave a bad review on TripAdvisor or Yelp. One diner notes that he was encouraged to visit the establishment after being handed a flyer for a place called the Pershing, arrived at the restaurant that didn't appear to have a name, and then afterwards saw the bill that he signed appeared to be from a business called the Chef Vincent Restaurant. It was only after searching for the physical address online that he found it to be most commonly referred to as Colony Cafe, despite the fact that he'd never come across that name while dining there. This is all very confusing. It does happen all the time though. Like, you look at your bank statement and it'll be like, you know, generic company name, and it's like, oh, okay, because they're all like, you know, the shop will be called like Jeff's, but it'll be like Turbo Industries Incorporated. And you're like, oh, brilliant. I don't know where I spent any of my money. Even McDonald's here, it comes up as Amrest. What the f? He may have been better off just throwing that flyer in the bin. The restaurant has a habit of promoting big discounts, which then seem to get completely forgotten when it's time to prepare the bill. One couple report that they popped in for a quick beach lunch of a couple of sandwiches and a couple of drinks, thinking they were taking advantage of a 2-for-1 drinks offer. The sandwiches were terrible. The final bill came to $60, with the price of the supposedly half-price drinks coming in at $27 for the two. That's expensive. But you know, these tourist traps, you gotta watch out. You gotta be careful. I was in China with a friend of mine, and we went to, like, I don't know, we arrived in some city. This is like 4 years ago. It's fucking unbelievably hot. Unbelievably hot. And we're like, let's get a beer. And there was a big sign and it was saying like, beer was like £1 or something. I'm like, dude, they got beer for £1. And it was like this random Chinese beer. And so we're sitting there, we're enjoying our beer for £1. We pay for our beer for £1. And then my friend's like, dude, I'm gonna get us a couple more beers. And I'm like, dude, get the cheap beers. And he comes back and he says, oh yeah, they gave me Carlsberg. And I'm like, oh, we're about to get financially raped. And the bill came and the beers were like £10 each. Oh, Mike. My friend's name was Mike. The apparent reasoning behind this is that the drinks, a rum and coke and a non-alcoholic virgin cocktail, were classed as two separate drinks because they used a combination of different ingredients. Just say, no, we didn't give you the discount because we like ripping you off. Just be honest. Another customer had similarly disappointing experience with a 2-for-1 drinks offer when he ended up getting charged $25 for just an iced tea. When he tried to question it with the waiter who had taken his order, the waiter started making out that he didn't speak the lingo, which is curious, as he was fluent in English when he took the order. You're also in Miami, right? The restaurant is also notorious for pretending that the credit card terminal is down, forcing customers to withdraw cash from a nearby, wildly overpriced ATM. But a bit of welcome news is that they're not expecting any tips from you. That's largely because they slap on a mandatory 20% service fee to your bill without informing you first. Danny, I feel like that. Am I wrong? Isn't that the whole of America? Like, everywhere I go, it's like, yeah, you know, the meal is, like I said, it's like $15 and then it's like $30 when you're done, or like 25 or something. I don't know. I don't like it. The Colony Cafe, or whatever it happens to be calling itself these days, is clearly not geared towards the concept of repeat custom. It's more about capturing vulnerable tourists for one visit only. And it still seems to be open for business today. So if you ever find yourself in Miami Beach, be sure to avoid the restaurant, allegedly. By the way, we have a purchthemerch.co t-shirt which just says allegedly now. We had allegedly, we now have allegedly without the legend bit highlighted, and these are coming my way. I would be wearing them obviously, but I'm still waiting. But shipping is super quick. It's not, you'll be waiting a little while. And then the regular allegedly ones, I think there's also the cocaine font allegedly. So check it out, purchthemerch.co. But I'm pretty sure it's the worst ever reviewed restaurant in the history of the internet, and my favorite Yelp review of the place includes these wonderful closing lines which say it all. This is absolutely the worst place I've ever been in the world. I would have been happier if I'd eaten at Subway and then got mugged afterwards. So no, that's a pretty bad day. You had to eat at Subway. Special bonus dish of the day. The special dish of the day may sound like the most tempting and exciting thing on the menu, but according to Sarah Zorn, the editorial director of the Restaurant Girl blog, it's one you should always avoid. Yeah, it's always, I never get the special. Whenever the waiter's like, would you like to hear the specials? Or like starts telling me the special, I don't want to eat your food that you want to get rid of today. It's probably not fresh. Silence, infidel! I don't say that. That's because Sarah reckons that the choice of the special dish is often based on nothing more than what aging ingredients and leftovers are in the kitchen and need to be cleared out more urgently. I thought this was true. I thought I mean, unless it's like a super fancy restaurant or something, I thought this was just the truth. So you could actually be choosing a dish made from the withering ingredients which are almost always ready, but not quite ready for the bin. Play it safe, go with the lion thigh and stuffed crepes every time, but steady on the guacamole. Bada bum bum. This has been Business Blaze. I have been your boy with the blaze. If you'd like to purchase the merch, purchathemerch.co. And thank you for watching. Silence, infidel!